never forget. It's a quiet fight in their shadow. Guard the light. We are still heels. We will not fail.
Keep breathing, write it down. When words are crimes, your breath is power now.
Stay alive. Level one. Bear witness. We're not done. Speak out when time is right. We remain. It's a quiet fight. Drink your water. Move in the dark. Breathe in and out. Don't lose the spark. Don't show your cards. Don't give it away. Just stay tonight. Tomorrow's our day.
Live today, outlast their storm. Speak for those whose voices go unknown.
Stay alive. Level one. Bear witness. We're not done. Speak out when time is right. We remain. It's a quiet fight. Don't give up the Don't give up the fight.
Welcome, agency. We are back. Sorry for the delay and for the bad experience. Those of you who happen to catch the now deleted live stream, we do not talk about. I've had some frustrating experiences in setting up the off grid house. So hopefully we get as few moments like that as possible. Hopefully you guys can still see me. I'm just gonna keep going, and hopefully things work out. We are in a very up in the air situation here at Hellfire Agency. It's weird because like my internet speed should be good. Let me do a quick speed test just to make sure that I don't know what I'm going to do about it. My internet looks like it's running fast. It did look like it was running fast. Now it's looking shitty, and that's weird. Oh well, like I said, we'll just keep going. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Guys, shout out to me in the comments. Can you hear me? Can you see me? And I'll just keep trying. I don't know. That's what life is about. Accepting that failure is standard. I have a very pessimistic outlook on my optimism lately, but for what it's worth, I feel optimistic. Robinson, yeah, what else? What else was there to do? What were you doing? I was putting up drywall, and while I was putting up drywall, I was
Of what
listening to them
looks like
talk
a
about
mushroomed out
Tyler
hollow point
Robinson.
in the
I want to give great props to this guy here. The YouTuber here, this channel is called Trigger Smart, I think. Trigger Smart. In any event, this guy was the guy that I had gotten the, now it turns out, erroneous idea. You know, he didn't say it was definitely this way. He was just trying to, you know, apparently he understands firearms pretty well. But this idea that the Mauser couldn't be armed with the low profile scope on it, and that it did appear as if the flag type safety on the Mauser that was collected by law enforcement, we're now finding out, was the SBI, the Utah State Bureau of Investigation, in conjunction with the UCSO and the FBI, and that's going to become relevant as this conversation develops, because the FBI, I don't have a lot of confidence in, but you know, then chalk that up with a whole lot of people out there. But generally speaking, I think that they have processes to try and weed out, you know, evidence tampering or planting evidence. The SBI, I couldn't really say. They're a bit of a mystery. But the Utah County Sheriff's Office, I don't put it past them to completely fabricate evidence. And that's just because I did so much true crime in Utah, true crime content, interfaced with a lot of shady crap that looked at that after closer examination. I went, oh my gosh, they'll do anything. They'll do anything to get their man. They will lie, cheat, and steal. It is, people don't understand. It is a huge, it is not acceptable in the state of Utah for a high profile crime to go unpunished. If they have to punish an innocent person, I don't put it past them at all. I don't put it past them at all. So that's just me going on record saying something. I don't know this to be for a fact, but every time that the Utah County Sheriff's Office, especially under Mike Smith, comes up in a case, I side eye it. I want more. I want something else. If Mike Smith tells you that the sky, you'll see me. It's feeding to me like this is wrong. Anyways, but this is also the guys. So it turns out that idea that the Mauser could not, the safety could not be armed. I think this is actually more. I thought this was a signal problem. More and more, I think it says I'm on. Anybody hear me? So lately, since I got this new extender, I don't know if you guys have you guys ever seen a Wi-Fi extender actually extend Wi-Fi? I got one, it didn't work. Anyways, we have a pretty tentative, pretty choppy situation right now until I can get a whole new line of internet run out to the house. So, anyways, hopefully you guys can still hear me and see me. In any event, but it doesn't really seem to It's a time we are having. It is by the scientific term. I'm having a time.
Of what looks like a mushroomed out hollow point.
So this is the guy who that safety question came about from his looking at that photograph. It turns out it's bullshit. Who cares? So now to the question is, now that we have actually seen the round or the fragments, at least some of the fragments that came from Charlie Kirk's remains, that is the bigger question that is being addressed now. So we've established that it is entirely plausible that the Mauser, believed to be Tyler Robinson's rifle, could be armed, including with that scope. It is entirely plausible at this point. We now have, because of the preliminary hearings, we now know that it's entirely plausible that he is actually that accurate with it, that he had practiced, and that it is plausible that the projectile in Charlie Kirk's body that was removed during the medical examiner's autopsy is actually potentially a 30-06 round. Now, why the damage that was done to him wasn't as extensive as believed before may have something to do with, as you might have guessed, how it actually struck and how the bullet actually struck when it with his body. I thought this was a good encapsulation of when a round like a 30-06 round, or at least a 30 caliber round, doesn't create an exit wound, which would create the extensive damage. The damage that you see when like people like practice shooting like a melon or a pork shoulder or meat or something like that is that it enters the mass, and then on its exit, it pulls everything apart. And so, at least as I understand it, and so they are examining what happens if, as apparently is in this case, the bullet strikes bone when it lands
in the throat. So now I want to point out here the vertebrae is right here.
My picture goes down for me. So hopefully, I don't know if you guys can still see me or not. So anyway, hi. You develop a lot of patience in situations like this. I'm basically living inside of a TV dinner. I don't know if you guys can see that. Like we've put up the insulation, and since I put up insulation in the house here, I can't get phone calls in it, and I can't get Wi-Fi. So I put a Wi-Fi extender in the window. I have to open the window to let Wi-Fi in. That window over there, not that one behind me. I'll open that one if it gets me better Wi-Fi. I'll do anything. Anyways, so now he's reviewing cases where people sent to him instances where they're like, "No, I've seen a 30-06 do exactly that."
I can't tell if this is from the back or the front. If one of you are like an X-ray expert or something, let me know. But that just kind of proves right there that stopped it. Now this could be just a handgun round, not as high velocity, but the same idea is there. Then you have this sizable bullet stuck in there. Another semi-deformed
Let me see if I can clear up some bandwidth by closing some things here. It might be that my OneDrive is taking up all my bandwidth. That was the problem. That was part of the problem last time. The other one is that it keeps trying to connect to a different wireless network. So, to do that, maybe I have to make it forget the other network. I don't know. So, anyways, hello. Hopefully you can see and hear me. Hopefully we're getting something done here. Hopefully something. Okay. So basically we've established it could be that it was Tyler Robinson's Mauser, it could be a 30-06. However, it is not uncommon for bullets from a 30-06 chambered rifle to do weird things. We're having such a good time. Okay. And so in any event, but we're going to go on from there. But one of the good. I'm glad we're doing that. Should I just quit? I'm going to try. I don't think this will work, but I'm going to try. All the things I think do work don't. So I'm going to try a few things that I don't think will work and see if they do. Because upside down world. Try again. No video. No extra video. Okay. I'm resisting very strongly the urge to just sit here and bitch about my situation, but that's not going to do anyone any good. So, hi. We're just adapting. Charlie Kirk is dead. Some people care, some people don't. Bluntly, I'm one of the people who doesn't. I don't care. He was a piece of shit when he was alive. I don't think he deserved to die for it. I don't. So I've stated that many times. But apparently we live in a world where you have to say it every 5 minutes. And every time you meet a new person, hello, my name is Joe. I don't think Charlie Kirk deserved to die for his opinions. I don't think he was a saint. I don't think he was a good man. I don't think he was the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. And if you don't think so, I could show you a few things about the awful things this person said and did. He was a bad person. That doesn't mean he deserved to die. If Tyler Robinson did this crime, shame on him. At the same time, if he did the crime, the place to do it is in Utah, where the law enforcement agencies don't problem, an ongoing problem. And I would know I've done a lot of true crime content based out of Utah when I was living there, and I'm still trying to do it from Virginia, and would love to do more of it when I have internet out here. There is internet in Virginia, but I haven't figured out the combination to make internet happen here. So up here on the mountain, it's a beautiful place though. So screw it, maybe I'll quit. the main issue here is that in the let me see if I can just connect to a different network and just see if we can just go old school on it. There used to be a way that I could downgrade the stream quality down from 1080p. I think that's already been done. Maybe that's the key, is just to make everything worse. Yeah. So it's I'm broadcasting 720p. I guess I just continue. People talk about Charlie Kirk as if they know him. People talk about Charlie Kirk as if his death is the worst thing to happen to this country. It's not. There are far worse things happening every day. The thing that's worthy of being upset about is that it indicates that our political and or value system as a people has devolved to the point of violence. And that is the most terrifying thing to come out of the Charlie Kirk incident for me. When people talk about Charlie Kirk as a father and as a husband, I used to be quick to point out he was a shitty father. He was a shitty husband. He was a shitty person. That doesn't mean he deserves to die for it. But people misunderstand that. You can say the sky is blue to a person who's determined not to hear that the sky is blue, and they'll never hear it, no matter how directly, how plainly you'll say it. So I just stopped. I stopped talking about it. But what does strike me as impressive is that nobody who claims to love Charlie Kirk wants his killer found. Nobody who claims to grieve Charlie Kirk wants his killer found. Nobody wants justice for Charlie Kirk. Nobody, absolutely nobody. His family doesn't want it. TPUSA doesn't want it. The government doesn't want it. Police don't want it. His fans don't want it. The government doesn't want it. President Trump doesn't want it. Nobody wants justice for Charlie Kirk. What they want is to see someone hang, or in this case, in the state of Utah, get the firing squad. They don't really care who it is. They certainly don't care if that person is guilty. As it turns out, I'm more convinced than ever before after this preliminary hearing that there is enough hearsay evidence and enough circumstantial evidence to suggest they may actually have the right guy. They may actually have Tyler Robinson, they may actually have him down to rights, so to speak, without using the wrong term, without using a loaded term. They may actually have the guy. There are huge problems with it, and points where I look at it and say, if you were going to commit a crime that you wanted through double jeopardy law, through constitutional law, to get away with and not have to pay the price for it, this is the way you'd pull it off, because there are so many problems and so many things that are stated confidently in the case where it is we are expected to overlook that not one person who was present at UVU that day saw Tyler Robinson do the crime. Period. 2, nobody who is testifying in this case, in this preliminary hearing, is a witness to the crime. 3, there's a uniformity in what people are saying about the crime of flat out false statements that are extremely telling that they would have to lie about them, considering what they are not presented, what they have omitted in the evidence, and that if somebody had as much access to discovery as the defense has, they would find, or the defense or the state, they would find there are key holes in the story of the narrative that's been practiced and rehearsed by so many actors, so many people in the, I don't mean actors like, like thespians. I mean persons, individuals. There's so many holes that are being covered by saying, okay, by everybody getting on the same page and saying, this is the narrative. On this date, we received this and we submitted this and we did this, we received this. The problem, though, is that they then have to submit that evidence to the ATF. They have to send it to the FBI. They have to send it to, to other agencies. And they have to consider that the witnesses that they have that they will need to bring to court in the event that it actually goes to trial, that the case actually goes to trial, are people who under cross-examination would probably crack. There would almost certainly be holes in their story. So that's why they want Lance Twiggs or Luna, and I don't know their pronouns still, that how they wanted that person to testify in a video that can't be cross-examined. And they want that person to, because the defense, even though there are plenty of reasons to be concerned that this defense is not up to the task, they're public defenders with a history. Let's just leave it at that. In this preliminary hearing, I thought they did very well. They actually got in there and started stirring up some shit and asking questions. I would try to show you more of this video from the preliminary hearing, but apparently that's what causes my internet to drop out the most. So let me just recap it for you. This is what I'm finding to be compelling. Okay, what we learned from from these preliminary hearings that jumped out to me is, number one, that the states collected firearms before they had the Mauser. One. Gosh, I really wish I could show you guys the video that I just spent like hours collecting. Whatever, it's just time. One, they had other firearms. What happened to them is not being accounted for. That's of key importance to me, given that after what we saw with the great interview, the great questioning of the toolmark examiner from the ATF, what's her name? Carmen? That after we saw this interview with them, or this testimony from her, it's pretty clear that they cannot establish that this Mauser is the weapon that killed Charlie Kirk. They can't show it. They can't. They don't have the proof. Now, they're right in saying, I think the state is right in saying that the defense arguing that the Mauser was ruled out, that Tyler Robinson's Mauser was ruled out, which I don't think they directly said it that way, but they did seem to imply it, is not true. It seems to me they used the right words with the right intonation, with the right attitude, to be able to give the insinuation that, oh yeah, they were able to show that it wasn't Tyler Robinson's Mauser that took that fatal shot that day. They did not do that. But while they said what they were able to show is that it cannot be proven that that weapon is the murder weapon purely by the ballistics alone. And that's key, because the only other way to establish really that Tyler Robinson's Mauser is the murder weapon is if there are no other alternatives. And that's a huge issue. Maybe I can pull up an image if I can't pull up a video. In this world where so many good things are happening all at the same time. So good to have good things. All right. I'm going to try and pull up this image, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to try and pull up a window here, and if it doesn't work and I lose you, well, just forgive me for having bad internet. So let me share a screen with you. This is from our community here on YouTube for the Church of Korihor, and here we go. So this is a screenshot that I had taken from my phone while I was watching this testimony. I keep saying interview, in which the examiner for the toolmark examiner who actually did the ballistics reporting on the Mauser, actually fired 6 rounds from it, actually started comparing tool marks on them and comparing them to the fragments that came out of Charlie Kirk's body. She came up and said one of the things that, standard procedure that they do is that she fed in the characteristics of the firearm, of the round that was pulled from Charlie Kirk's body, of which, by the way, very important to point out, they had 7. She confirmed that her understanding was that there were 7 fragments that the medical examiner took out of Charlie Kirk's body. But when she got the fragments sealed in an envelope, in a manila envelope, there were only 4 of them. Not including the major piece, the biggest piece that she was able to do most testing. The other pieces after that piece, they were so badly damaged and so small that she wasn't able to come up with any microscopic markings off of them that could actually help in identifying what weapon they came from. So it was just the one fragment at the end of the day that she was able to use to determine. She can't determine. And but one of the interesting things that she did do is she was able to assess that it is roughly the size, the diameter of a 30 caliber round. So could be from a 30-06, absolutely. The actual fragments pulled from Charlie Kirk's body. She was able to establish how that it had peeled back or that had crumpled in on itself on impact. So very likely it did strike a bone or something, strike something hard on Charlie Kirk's body, in Charlie Kirk's body. And then she had to actually pry it open with pliers in order to assess what kind of material it was, what kind of damage, and if there were any unique tool marks. And at the end of the day, she was able to identify that there were some distinguishing marks on there, but none that could be consistently, not enough to consistently decide whether or not that bullet fragment actually came out of or processed through the tool, which is to say Tyler Robinson's Mauser. So at this point, I'm not saying that they don't have a murder weapon, but they don't have a murder weapon that they can prove. And that's a huge problem, right? So they have to make up in the aggregate all, that Tyler Robinson's firearm, that this firearm is the only one it could possibly be. It's the only one that makes sense. The issue is that she then fed into the software that the ATF uses for tracking, for tracking ammunition and firearms. And what she found was this list of different kinds of weapons that this round could have come from. If that had said a Mauser 98, we'd be done, right? This would be open and shut. Why I hear voices out there. Probably just my voice bouncing back at me inside my tin can. If this list said, this would be a 30-06 chambered Mauser 98 with a sporterized barrel and apparently a custom aftermarket safety and a low profile scope or optical device, done and done. Let's get out of here. That's lunch, folks, and we're done. Sorry, Tyler, you're toast. But look, there's this great big list, and in this list you have a 30 carbine Iver Johnson PI. The PI firearm type in this right hand column means pistol. A 30 carbine Plainfield, I believe it says RI, which I believe is rifle. 30 carbine Luger PR. Now that one I found very interesting. That's the only one I actually looked up so far. That's the only one I looked up so far, just because I thought it was interesting, because it said that it was a revolver. It says PR, which means a revolver, a pistol revolver. And the reason why I find that interesting is that they, like I said, of the things that they did not include in the narrative, that the state has not included in the narrative, is that they had in their possession when Tyler Robinson's Mauser was found, which was apparently the morning of the 11th. So this is a full day. This is going into day number 2. Donald Trump has already come out and made his statement, as I understand it, saying they're going to find this guy. Leave it to Utah. They still have the death penalty there. And so so now the pressure is mounting to say, we got to find a guy, and this guy's got to pay with his life. And that's a lot of pressure to put on Utah's law enforcement agency, especially in a complicated situation like this, and where Charlie Kirk's, private security should have done more to protect him. Utah law enforcement couldn't do it. Private security apparently couldn't do it either. If it was just some guy from down in St. George area just walked onto a building, threw a towel down on the ground, down on a rooftop, surrounded by people on all sides, takes this fatal shot, and then stands up, runs to the other end of the building and jumps off and runs off into the woods. I mean, as you can imagine, with as much security as was there, this is a pretty embarrassing thing. And so they are very much feeling the pressure. As that pressure starts to mount, that's where my concern comes up and says, this is where people start planting evidence or hiding evidence. One of the things that they have had to admit in this preliminary hearing is that they had other potential firearms. They had other potential murder weapons. And one of them apparently was in a backpack. It was a pistol that was confiscated while they were doing this work. And while they were looking for for persons of interest, there were people who were detained, but they weren't finding who they were looking for. So, of course, then when somebody says, hey, this guy who's from down in Washington County was there, and he looks like the guy in the videos that you've released and when they get that tip, and then all of a sudden, as soon as they get as they put that out there, they start putting out these images of what is presumably Tyler Robinson, and it may very well be Tyler Robinson. Then all of a sudden, the very next morning, there's Tyler Robinson's Mauser in a clearing of trees or in a wooded area near UVU's campus, not on the campus, and all these text messages are apparently starting to populate on Luna or Lance Twig's phone and or Discord. And are they real? They could very well be. Are they manufactured? Boy, it would take a lot. I don't see that it's impossible, though. But then you start seeing these things and say, okay, well, that round, okay, so we know that that's Tyler Robinson's Mauser. He's had it for a while. So, they have to make that fit the crime. Now, luckily for them, it's the same caliber. It fires the same caliber of round. However, it would be a pretty rare exception for it to not do more damage than the round that got Charlie Kirk did. That does start to look just like in the video. I don't know if you guys got to see any of the video I was trying to show you. It looks more like a pistol round. So, and you've got this, and the characteristics of that round, of the jacket and of the actual material do fit not only with a Smithfield type 30-06 rifle like Tyler Robinson's Mauser, it also fits with a Luger pistol. And then you have, in that situation, you do have carbine pistols. This is not two words you usually hear together, but they do have them. carbine pistols that are actually quite good for firing across long ranges and causing some serious damage. So we have, but not so much as you would expect from a 30-06 rifle from 100 yards away or thereabouts. And so it's of key importance that we establish here there was at least one pistol that they had, but when Tyler Robinson's Mauser emerges, it disappears, and there's no accounting for it because this preliminary hearing isn't about a pistol that they found over here or other firearms, because apparently they had what's now coming out of the preliminary hearings is that they had multiple firearms that were confiscated that day. And so when Tyler Robinson's Mauser shows up on the scene, all of a sudden everybody else is off the hook. So when it comes out that the ballistics report says that they can't confirm, she cannot confirm that the markings, that the tool marks on that round pulled from Charlie Kirk's body were passed through this rifle, it's now a huge problem, if you ask me. And so what do you do in that situation? You don't mention it. You do everything you can to not mention it. So, of course, when the defense gets all of this discovery material from the state, their first complaint is, we've never seen a situation where law enforcement gave us so much material. We don't understand why they're not just giving us the material relevant to the case. Instead, we are drowning in data with all of this footage. It's like, give us the footage that's relevant and then give us the footage around that, just in case we have to, why do we have to get terabytes and terabytes of security camera footage? Well, because they don't want you to find everything. They want you to have to spend your time combing through hours and hours and hours of footage. They're like, we're public defenders, guys. We're practically doing this, out of the goodness of our hearts here. This is ridiculous. And so they're drowning them in all of this information. And this is a tactic that feels like, if you don't have a good case and you're trying to hide some of the process to building your narrative, this is exactly what you would expect them to do. That being said, it could just be that Tyler Robinson did it, and if it weren't for Luna or Lance, whatever they go by, if it weren't for them, this might never have been solved. And so, who knows? It also could be that Luna is lying. It could be entirely that Lance is lying. If Lance is lying, that's another one. Why would they lie? What is the real story? And that's the kind of thing that's not going to come out. I swear I hear something. Anyway, that's the kind of thing that's not going to come out in a preliminary hearing. That's something that's going to come out trial. So now, and all that this is to try and figure out, did they do enough to go to trial? I think that the next thing we are going to see is jury selection, and is an opportunity for Tyler Robinson to enter in a plea. Probably the very next thing will be, did the defense do a good enough job at trying to establish to the state, in this instance, we will cross-examine the hell out of your witnesses. You get those witnesses up on the stand, we are going to point out all the lies in your narrative, and we're going to poke holes in it, and we are going to show to the jury that you are a bunch of liars. And because there's all of this, the narrative is, we arrived on scene, and then the next morning we got a tip. We released all the information about the with images of the actual guy, of the guy we think it is. And then the very next day, we had the weapon. When the truth is, they had multiple persons of interest by that time. They had multiple weapons. At least that's what they had to admit to in the preliminary hearing. I wish I could show you those moments. The other thing that was interesting was when they got to the DNA evidence. The DNA evidence on the actual Mauser and or the towel that it came from. At first, the DNA, the examiners found that the DNA supported that there were multiple persons' DNA on the weapon, namely, there were as many as 3. They had to narrow it down to 2, and they spent an inordinate amount of time in court today explaining the process of how they took the profiles from potentially 3 different people and narrowed them down using Lance Twiggs' DNA as the elimination, pulling Lance Twiggs' DNA out of the equation, saying, well, we know it's not Lance. How do we know it's not Lance? That's another story. I don't know that they even tried to tell that story. How do you know it's not Lance who pulled the trigger? In any event, Lance's DNA is on the Mauser. Well, they lived with Tyler Robinson. You would expect that. You would expect there to be something. So they used it to eliminate. The problem is that in that process, they still have not established who this potential third person is. Is this just other DNA, that just happened to land on the weapon? Some other conventional way. Maybe they, the person who sporterized it, the what do you call them? The gunsmith who sporterized it. Maybe it's Tyler Robinson's grandpa, who owned it before him. Maybe it's, a sibling who he let fire it once. Whatever it is, a third person appears to plausibly have touched this or interacted with this weapon. Again, it's all the devil's in the omission of the details here, because from UVU campus to Tyler Robinson's front door is a 3 to 4 hour drive. I know because I've made that drive so many times because my parents live like around the corner down there. And I lived up in American Fork for 10 years more, 15 years, I think. A long time. And I've made that trek, boom, 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 going back and forth. I can tell you, somebody could easily call in and say, we got to get a suspect out of this. Hey, what happened with that guy, who hates, conservatives or whatever? Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah, he's like dangerous. He could actually be. Yeah, he's our guy. He's our guy. Go over to his place, get his rifle, and drive it up here, and have it by 7, 8, 9 in the morning the next day. No problem. And well, how do you even connect it to make sure that everybody knows that it's him? Wrap it up in a towel. And so whose DNA is on it? Lance Twiggs, Tyler Robinson. You have 2 people sharing a bathroom, at least some of the time. There's a towel in that bathroom. You put that towel onto a rifle. You got those 2 people's DNA on that rifle. So it's like, but then what came out of it was plus a third person potentially that they couldn't isolate and identify. They could identify Tyler. They could identify Twiggs. But there is a possibility that there's a third person here that came out in the cocktail of all these swabs. So you have this narrative that starts naturally forming that says law enforcement gets to day 2 of the Charlie Kirk case, and they don't have any persons of interest that are panning out as suspects. Suddenly they have to make one. And they're not the ones on trial if Tyler Robinson goes to trial. So, they get to craft the narrative one way that says, well, obviously it's him that did it. Look at this, look at that, look at this. Follow our path. As long as nobody stops to say, well, what about this third person who interacted with this Mauser? There may be a totally logical explanation for how Tyler Robinson is guilty, and yet you have a third person interacting with the weapon. That makes total sense. However, one of the explanations, very plausible explanations, is Mike Mitchell, family friend who's supposed to, he's supposed to be relying on, drives up to UVU campus with his Mauser, deposits it in a place with a towel, gets back in his car, drives home, calls mom and dad. Mom and dad Robinson says, what that guy on TV looks like Tyler. They freak out. He says, let's go turn him in. They go find Tyler. Tyler says, might say it was me. Might not say it was me. But then he gets the one, but whatever happens, he decides to go and to Washington County Sheriff's Office with them in Hurricane and make a statement. And this is where, again, now we have another phase of what's really interesting in the omissions. The media has tried to get the footage of Tyler Robinson at the Washington County Sheriff's Office turning himself in with Mike Mitchell. They have an 1102 statement, or in other words, a reliable hearsay statement from Mike Mitchell, who used to work in that department for 20 years, allegedly, or similar ones, saying that he knows Tyler Robinson. Then and then apparently making other statements regarding why he thinks that Tyler Robinson is guilty. But then and then everybody's been saying the whole time, because this is the narrative that's getting painted out there by the state, is that, and while there, Tyler Robinson confessed to killing Charlie Kirk. Great. Where's the confession? Well, they don't have a confession to show. Now we know, because of the preliminary hearing, that Nate Brooksby, Washington County Sheriff, and his team, as required by law, recorded that confession, supposedly, this interrogation, how you want to call it. And when they did it, where is that actual footage? Why haven't they submitted it? They just haven't submitted it. Okay, but they did submit footage of Tyler Robinson in a lobby outside of the room, the interrogation room. Why? What? Why go to that much lengths? Why go to that length, those lengths, to show that Tyler Robinson was there and not show the moment where he said it was me? Now, part of that could be that there is case law that says if there's a confession, you can't show the actual confession. You can't play the actual confession. But that doesn't mean that they can't submit it into evidence. And as far as I have seen so far, there is no recording, there is no confession that's been submitted into evidence in this preliminary hearing of Tyler Robinson telling Nate Brooksby or any of his people there that he did it. What we do see is that a few weeks after this, alleged confession from Tyler Robinson, Nate Brooksby gets called into a third-party panel that's convened to address a disciplinary issue. Allegedly, at the beginning, it is supposed to do something to do with potentially sexual harassment of one of his deputies' wives. Don't know much. We don't know any details on that. I haven't heard any details on that. What comes out of it, though, is that he botched some high-profile case. He writes himself a great, apparently a great severance package, and agrees to resign as Washington County's sheriff. And then he's gone. And it's like, what? What's happening here? What? Wait a minute. What is the high profile case? Is it the Tyler Robinson case? And what did he screw up? Hey, Tim, I was showing a video, guys, from the preliminary hearing, but apparently my internet is not strong enough to broadcast and also show video clips. So I'm just kind of recapping off the top of my head until I can get strong internet out to the off-grid house. Anyways, so far the things that we're finding out so far in the case, it just don't add up. In spite of the fact that I am more convinced than ever before. I may have called this one wrong. Tyler Robinson may have actually done it, but the main things are this: they don't have a weapon that they can solidly connect to the victim, so that's a problem. They did collect other firearms, but when Tyler Robinson's Mauser was collected, apparently those were, for all that anybody knows, just returned to their owners. Do they still have them in custody? Do they still have them? Have they sent them to the ATF? Apparently, at least some items were sent to the ATF and to the FBI for further testing. But we don't have, because those didn't have to do with Tyler Robinson. We don't have, the due diligence on those items and who they belong to and so forth, because nobody's been charged in those cases. Only Tyler Robinson is being charged so far. So we don't know all of the possible persons of interest who they were actually making progress on, let alone, is it possible that somebody did this crime and just got away with it clean? One of the so there's the fact that they don't have a weapon. There's the fact that the projectile seems more consistent with a projectile of a similar caliber to a 30-06 round, but fired from a pistol, and the ballistics report showing various different kinds of weapons that could have fired a round just like the one that was pulled from Charlie Kirk's body, and among them are pistols. And the fact that the state actually did confiscate on the 10th at least one backpack or that contained a pistol, and of somebody who apparently had the opportunity there to take a shot. What do we know about that pistol? Nothing. There's no explanation about why they ruled that out. As far as we know, the reason why they ruled it out is they found Tyler Robinson's Mauser, so now they didn't have to do any of this. But wait a minute. Did they do their due diligence to say, okay, just because it seems plausible that this Tyler Robinson guy is the problem, that he's the culprit, that doesn't mean that you stop investigating all these other possibilities, especially in case it turns out that it's all a lie. No matter how good it sounds, the story, the narrative, it's not true. So there is these other firearms. We don't have any account for what they were, when they were returned, and how closely they match this list from the ATF of other potential firearms that could have fired this round that took the life of Charlie Kirk. Because the Mauser can't be identified, it hasn't been completely disqualified, but it cannot be identified by these fragments. There is also the case of the missing 3 fragments. Apparently, the medical examiner pulled 7 fragments of a bullet out of Charlie Kirk's body. By the time that the ATF gets these fragments, there are 4 of them. And of those 4, one of them is very difficult to find any tool markings on it at all, but they do find some. And the other ones, they're completely useless for comparison. What about the 3 missing fragments? Were those the ones that could have ruled out the Mauser as the murder weapon? And so they just went missing. These are all problems, right? Then of course you have this DNA of a third person allegedly on the Mauser. Where did that come from? And then you have the ring footage. The ring footage submitted by apparently a Ms. and Mr. Noble shows that just after midnight, as I understand it, this Dodge Challenger or a Dodge Challenger light car stops out in front of their home. And they can tell apparently by the shape that it is that one. Yeah, well, that's a good point, Tim. As long as the range is from the Lossy Center. If a pistol is fired from inside the atrium somewhere, that would be a different thing. But what proof do we have that somebody had fired from from inside the atrium or somewhere a closer range? The answer is apparently there was a holster found on the property, a pistol holster, and by a state trooper who was off duty, had come out to see the Charlie Kirk event, and then reported that to law enforcement and said, "Hey, I found this holster here." And that's the last we hear of it, apart from apparently the defense and scouring all of this, the testimony and evidence that they got in discovery from this mountain of evidence that's the reason why they asked for months and months of extra time to go through and find all these different stories. They found that there are apparently 2 accounts of somebody, one of whom found reporting that there was a pistol holster found on the premises, and another one saying it wasn't an empty holster, there was a pistol in it. And then there was allegedly, among the other firearms confiscated in the investigation, there was at least 1 pistol included. So, I mean, can you make this crime happen with a pistol instead of a revolver? Not from the roof of the Lossy Center, but what about from the atrium? What about from behind Charlie Kirk? What about from, there's all of these other narratives that nobody's considering because the state is building and reiterating the same narrative. Then, of course, you have Lance Twiggs' testimony, which is pretty damning. Apart from the fact that, once again, Twiggs wasn't there. Tyler Robinson's parents weren't there. Mike Mitchell wasn't there. Do you need me to go on? They can't even yet entirely show that Tyler Robinson was there, unless there's like his cell phone data maybe will show that, or if they can show us actual images from the freeway. Why not? Why don't we have freeway images of Tyler Robinson's Challenger driving down the highway, driving down the I-15 with his license plate clearly visible? They have those cameras. Don't tell me they don't. We've all seen them. Do they just not have the authority right now? Do they not have the search warrant to show his car coming and going from Utah County? It seems like that would be pretty easy for them to get. I don't know. The other, so that's those are some interesting problems with the narrative. That being said, those could all be wrong, and the state actually figured out the truth. Who knows? But they're going to have to. We did certainly see that there was a lot about the narrative, even in support of their own narrative, that they kept back until they got to the preliminary hearing. That makes sense. They don't want the defense getting the jump on it and starting to poke holes on it until they have it. Exactly. GPS tracking on the phones. Also, they pulled out the metadata. Here's another one. They pulled the metadata from Lance Twiggs' phone using Cellebrite, the software that downloads basically everything off of your phone, but then, in accordance with a search warrant, allows them to search for just certain content and pull it up in that from that data. If you're sending messages back and forth through instant messaging and or text messages, they want that data, because inside that SMS data or whatever data, in addition to just the text, they also are going to get the timestamps. They're going to get emojis, whatever else they may that may come up there. So why is it then that when they submit it into evidence, that Lance Twiggs' phone has this conversation between him and Tyler Robinson. What they submitted into evidence wasn't the data from his phone. They submitted photographs that an officer had taken of Lance Twiggs' phone from his phone. So you have an officer take out their phone, I presume, and take pictures and start taking pictures of the text message conversation between him and Tyler Robinson, which immediately raises concerns for me. It's like, why wouldn't you just send the text message? That's the kind of thing that you would do if you're relying on that. The public and a jury is just going to believe you if you say, oh, maybe this is a doctored conversation, a planted conversation on this phone. But our law enforcement officers wouldn't do that. Twiggs wouldn't do that. And have people nod their head and say about a person they don't even know, people they don't even know, well, yeah, they wouldn't do that. How do you know? Well, no, these are professionals. They do this all the time. You'd be shocked what these people do all the time. You just have to look into some of these cases. You'd be shocked. There's a reason why Nate Brooksby is out of a job right now. So, and we don't know what that is, but quite plausibly, it is the reason why we don't have Tyler Robinson's confession to Washington County Sheriff's Office. The whole reason why he's in this trouble is supposedly he got arrested for what he said to the Washington County Sheriff's Office. And if that it's a good question, Benjamin. Good, cool. And what constitutes a biased jury? And who's the jury pool? What's going to happen when the defense comes out and files for a change of venue saying there isn't a Mormon in Utah who doesn't want Tyler Robinson to pay the ultimate price for this? They don't care whether he did it or not. You know, and then you have somebody coming out and saying, you have the state come out in defense of that, of their narrative, to say, wait a minute, no, we're perfectly reasonable people in Utah. You're gonna have a fight on your hands, aren't you? But what happens then when Washington County Sheriff's Office, with this narrative, when the Utah County comes back up with this case at trial, if they do, and I'm sure they will, and the defense says, it's interesting that there was DNA evidence of a third person that got omitted after you talked to the ATF, because that's what the examiner at the ATF said, that she had talked to the law enforcement agents and with her colleagues, and decided to eliminate this third person from whose DNA was found on the Mauser. And it's like that's where they're going to start poking holes at it. That's where they're going to start as saying, there are all these problems. One of them is going to be Washington County Sheriff's Office, according to the state. The whole reason why they took Tyler Robinson into custody is because after everything that had happened, Tyler Robinson confessed to Washington County Sheriff's Office that he did this crime. And then there's no actual recording of that confession. Tells me, for me, I look at that and I say, okay, I see only one reason. Frankly, I see one reason. And that is something happened in the course of this interrogation, however soft the interrogation was, the casual chat with Tyler Robinson. Something was said on camera. Either A, they didn't record it, and that's a problem because they have to record it. B, what did I say? A or B? A or one? Either one, they didn't record it, or it failed to record, and they don't want to own up to that. Two, they did something in the process of this that throws into question how voluntary Tyler Robinson's confession is. In the state of Utah, as well as federally, the law is pretty clear that in order for a confession to count as a confession, it has to be absolutely voluntary. And in waiving a defendant's right or a suspect's right to pretrial silence, and in cases like this one, apparently, their right to have counsel present when being questioned by the police. And if Nate Brooksby lost his job because of a high profile, he botched a high profile event, and this confession is not part of the state's claims, I'm very, very suspicious that this is probably that they know there is evidence in this recording that Nate Brooksby and or the Washington County Sheriff's Office coerced Tyler Robinson into confessing to a crime that he quite plausibly didn't commit. But whether he committed it or not, if they did try to coerce him, the case is sunk. And even if it's very clear that, well, they're just pressuring him to confess the truth. If they did pressure him and that is evident in the recording in any way, or that any witness can testify to it, whether that's Tyler Robinson's mother, whether it's Twigs, whether it's a member of the sheriff's office who was there and says, I hate the way that this is being done. I'm going to expose this, whatever it may be. There's a reason why they're not including that in their evidence so far. We'll see what happens when things go to trial. Which at this point I'm more convinced than ever that it is. Good conversation, Benjamin and Tim, but beyond any reasonable doubt. Well, and that's the wondrous thing also about this preliminary hearing. The bar is so much lower in a preliminary hearing, right? Absolutely everything we heard in this preliminary hearing yet is either scientific data from the feds or hearsay at the local level. Now, in Utah, they have this standard under Utah Rules of Evidence 1102 called reliable hearsay, in which basically if a police officer puts it into a report, if a police officer records it for internal purposes, it's as good as evidence. So, of course, the problem being there that you have a lot of people involved in this case. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people in this case. Like I said, somebody found, according to the reports the defense found, somebody found a gun. Somebody found a pistol. And we don't know what it is. That should have been included, if you ask me. That should be part of the narrative. Say, we did find this, and this is how we ruled it out. Or what have you, right? Instead, they go and they had to go in, the defense had to go in and cross-examine the experts and say, is it true? They asked the woman who was in charge of evidence of the crime scene, isn't it true that you found other firearms? Yeah, there were other firearms. Wait a minute, what? Yeah, we found some other ones. Well, we were looking at the time. We didn't know if it was an active shooter situation still. We didn't know who it was. We didn't have Tyler Robinson. We didn't have his Mauser yet. It's like, what happened with these other firearms? Because now the Mauser can't be matched to the bullet that they pulled out of Charlie Kirk. Maybe they can match it to something else. Maybe they can match it to one of these other weapons you had. Or maybe the weapon's still out there somewhere. And what are you doing to look for that? Is anybody looking for that? They don't care. They don't care about catching Charlie's killer. They care about getting Tyler Robinson so that they can just move on. And it's starting to feel a little sticky. At the same time, like I said, I am more convinced than ever with this Lance Twiggs interview that I may have called this wrong from the beginning. It may actually be that Tyler Robinson did it. And so yeah. But okay, so those are the key pieces. Oh, the Noble family. So apparently, a Ms. Noble submitted this ring footage of a Dodge Challenger, very much like Tyler Robinson's, parked outside of their home there in Utah County, I think in Orem, near UVU's campus. And that footage of the vehicle gets submitted into evidence in this case. But then the defense comes out and questions Detective Hull, who I guess now is Sergeant Hull, who now apparently has gone from working as a detective or as a special agent with the SBI. Now he works in kind of like an internal affairs role where he actually investigates abuse by police. So that's a curious. In any event, but they asked him, they said, were you aware of an interview with Ms. Noble? And he's like, yeah, I'm aware of the interview. And they're like, you aware? And they asked him, are you aware that Ms. Noble said that the driver of the silver Dodge Challenger, or that she caught on her Ring camera, was a bald man? And he had to admit, yeah, something like that. And do you recall that in that interview that she said that he had 3 passengers in the car? Maybe, I don't know. If it's not the narrative, it's a lot of, gosh, I don't remember. Without my notes in front of me, all of a sudden this narrative starts to fall apart, and they haven't even got to trial yet. This is just preliminary. This is just in the hearing. What's happened here is this shot fired across the bow by the defense saying, you take this to trial, we will shoot all kinds of holes in it. We will start sinking it. And we can start ruining people's careers, frankly, and start insinuating they planted this evidence. You have the something we had never heard about before, at least I had never heard about before, and I'd followed this really closely, that apparently on a safe inside a spare bedroom in Tyler Robinson's townhome in Washington City, Washington, Utah, there was a test-fired round that had been engraved with a Dremel tool and simply said like test fire or something, or test round or something like that. Again, suspicious. Because of course, even if you had done that, even if you had engraved something like that on a round, thinking to yourself, would this actually work? Which it is a legit concern. You engrave something you engrave on a brass casing for a cartridge like this. You engrave on there with a Dremel tool. You very likely could potentially mar that surface enough that it won't fire, or that it will misfire. Is my understanding, anyways. I'm not a ballistics expert, but that's stupid dangerous. But if you did do that, and that you're about to go up and commit a major crime, and that somebody who law enforcement's going to go to where you live as soon as they can get a search warrant if they catch you, would you just leave all the evidence splayed out on top of the safe in the spare bedroom? It feels a little too much like planted evidence, especially because they took, basically what they claim to have found on this safe into Robinson's apartment is almost exactly what they found on the shell casings and live ammunition that was supposedly found with the Mauser. I'm not saying that Tyler Robinson didn't do it. It's very possible he did do it. But if you were going to make it look like something that the police would jump for and say, oh yeah, we got the guy, and then take it to court, and say, look at all the ways in which you botched this investigation. Obviously, I'm not the guy, and then get away with it. This is the way it would look, right? Because how do you at this point, how does anybody defend against Tyler Robinson saying, I love Luna. I apparently pissed her off with something I said, and it turned her against me. She's got emotional disturbances. We've been dealing with it for a while, but I just knew when I went to talk to her that she thought that I had done this terrible crime. So I contacted a friend and said, I want to go into Washington County Sheriff's Office and turn myself in to say I was there. I saw what happened, but I'm not the guy. And then when I got there, determined that Luna was going to expose me as if I had done it, and decided instead that I would invoke my right to silence and wait until I had an attorney before I made any more statements. Next thing I know, I'm in Utah County, and I'm in jail, but I didn't do it. If he can say that and make a good case for it, what case do they have left? They don't have a weapon. They don't have a motive. Even Lance says Tyler never talked about Charlie Kirk. I don't know how, said something to the effect of, I don't know how that, I didn't even know who Charlie Kirk was. I don't know that Tyler ever knew who he was. I mean, your case is sunk with, I don't know, Luna and I were feuding and she's pissed at me. They're pissed at me. And, their case is sunk. They got nothing left. So it's wild to me that people are still just repeating narratives of things that are just not true. They say, oh, he confessed. There's no confession. Confessions are signed. This is very key, very important, guys. Protesters say this. I learned watching Whale Wars. You guys ever watch that back in the day? Those guys are something. Sea Shepherd. I love the story of it that they told in Whale Wars. There is a good case to be made that they're terrorists, but but the guy Paul, he said this once, and I've looked into it several times, and this is a thing that's goes back all the way to protests back in like the 50s and 60s and like anti-war protests and stuff. Is that they would say, he says, we learned this. He said back when I protested, I think he was saying when we're protesting the Vietnam War, enlisting in the Vietnam War, he said you would say, nobody signs, everything's fine. Is it nobody signs, everything's fine? Nobody, it's nobody talks, everyone walks. Nobody signs, everything's fine. If you don't have a signed confession, you don't have a confession, or at least a recorded confession, which I found out in the course of getting into the rules of evidence and the rules in this case. It is the law that if somebody says, I'm going to confess to a homicide, you have to record it. I didn't know that. And apparently that recording is missing, or they're not submitting it for whatever reason. Because even when the media came out and said, look, what do we have to do to get footage of Tyler Robinson turning himself in? Because that turns this whole thing around. If Tyler Robinson gets out of a car voluntarily on his own will, on his own willpower, walks into the office in Hurricane, into the Washington County Sheriff's Office, goes into a room with Nate Brooksby, sits down and says, I killed Charlie Kirk. I feel terrible, and now I just want to do the right thing. You get from there to there, that's an open and shut case. Why even bother? Why bother with a trial at that point? At that point, this is an open and shut case. Why are we not seeing this confession? Why doesn't Tyler Robinson tell you where everything is? Why is there even a preliminary hearing happening here if he confessed to it? And tell us that it has nothing to do with Nate Brooksby retiring early with a sweet golden parachute of you screwed us over. You screwed up the biggest case to come through this county ever. Uh, Float away and go away, son. Money, and just disappears into into the sunset, and that's got nothing to do with this supposed confession. So that's the other one. Let me compare my notes here just to make sure that I got everything. Um, the thing that there are a couple things that even I look at and say, I don't even know what this is supposed to mean. Noah Gonzalez. Apparently, there was a Noah Gonzalez who was an off-duty trooper. Was interviewed in the process on the 10th and said that he had found a holster, and then at least one other person testified that a handgun was found in a holster at the scene. But Detective Hull, or Special Agent Hull, who was the agent in charge, said he had no memory of that. Really? Wow. Okay. Also there was a bullet. So there was a 30-06 style bullet apparently found on another building, also around the atrium, on a different side of the campus from the law scene. Not different side of the campus, but on different side of the building, the computer science building, I believe. And they found this round on the ground that also appears to be, or according to reports, as I understand it, anyways, was also a 30-06 round. And that when Special Agent Hull was questioned about it, he said, "Yeah, we don't really know where that came from." What? That's a pretty big deal, right? Because I mean, what if the person took the shot? What if even that was Tyler Robinson up there on the Lossy Center with his Mauser? Even if that were the case, that doesn't mean he did it, especially if there's a round on the other side of the building that could have been discharged. It could have been the backup round that somebody dropped after having taken the actual shot from the other side of the building. And his conclusion was, well, no, what happens is we keep rifles with us. And when he's asked who does, he says the SBI, the state. And it's like, okay, so you keep rifles with you. Yeah, for protection. Sure, why not? Okay, great. And he says, well, we keep them cruiser ready. And the defense asked him, what does that mean? You keep them cruiser ready? He says, well, we don't transport them with a round in the chamber. We eject it. You open it up, open up the bolt action, or remove the magazine, and pull and what's the word I'm looking for? Somebody out there who knows guns better will do it. Yeah. Oh, that's right. It was a 223. Thank you. Who is MJ Grieco? You're right. I don't think it was. Yeah, maybe that's true. It wasn't a 30-06. It was a 223 bullet. Anyway, so was found on the ground, and he said, "Yeah, we determined that was ejected from the that an officer had come around, done a patrol of the area, and then when he decided to get back into his patrol vehicle, he opened it back up and ejected the round, and instead of catching it, he lost it and just said, screw it, and then got into his patrol vehicle and drove away. And when he's asked by the attorney, is that a normal thing? And he's like, I don't know. What is it a normal thing? And he asks him, have you ever done that? And he's like, yeah, I've done that. You left a bullet in an active crime scene? All right. Yeah, the computer building roof. Yeah. But it was on the other side, right? From the Lossy Center. Did Tyler Robinson drop it? Did Tyler Robinson go through there? Why would he have a round from a completely different gun? Did he have other weapons? That's it. And then you have all of this evidence that was determined after a lot of questioning. What's her name? The woman who was in charge of the crime scene itself, was securing the crime scene. I had all my notes pulled up, and then my computer crashed. It was a cartridge, of my understanding, in the casing. So it was an unfired round. As my understanding, it was a live round. So, but the what was I saying about that? Shoot. About Taylor Robinson up on the roof. If he had been. Oh, the other thing is that apparent is all these questions around the discovery of the screwdriver and the disturbance in the gravel. That you have at least one officer investigating the place where the shot was alleged to have been taken from. When he gets up there and is doing his round, his investigation, his body camera died. The battery on his body cam died. But he had only been on shift for a little over an hour, and they're not supposed to die that fast. But apparently inside that window, there are all these questions now raised of, is that when the screwdriver was found? Because the screwdriver is found that has Tyler Robinson's DNA and apparently Lance Twig's DNA. That's the newest that to come out of the DNA evidence that's giving a little bit of okay, if Tyler Robinson brought a screwdriver from home allegedly so he could assemble or disassemble any kind of components on the rifle, and brought it with him for whatever reason, whether I assume that you can use a screwdriver. I don't really do a lot. I don't do much shooting myself, but I do believe that there are some scopes where to adjust it, you have to use a screwdriver. So I guess that makes sense. They brought it from home. However, from what I understand, the discovery is being listed is being brought up as if they found it right away on the 10th while it was still mayhem, and then submitted it with the towel that had DNA from Tyler Robinson and Lance Twig, suggesting that he brought it from home. That those get submitted later at the same time. Well, as I pointed out, those don't the towel and the rifle don't get found until the next day. In that amount of time, somebody could take those items, go into Lance and Tyler's home in Washington, grab those items, throw them in the back of the car, drive up to Utah County, deliver them right there and then. You have everything that you need. You've got a weapon and you've got DNA. Prove that that's not what they did. Well, we can take the police at their word until somebody starts poking the right holes at it to say, where were you when this happened? Why don't these things match up? So it's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Tim, you used to own a Mauser at one point, right, Tim? But before it was stolen. That's the other thing about the, I'm perfectly happy to let go of the manufacturer flag safety, right? I was very sold on that, as you guys recall. I was like, wow, that really does look right. But I remember looking and saying, I have seen aftermarket low profile safeties that are added onto these sporterized versions of these Mauser 98s. But you have to get in really close to see whether or not it's got one of those that opens around sideways or that can just open, from where your thumb is, without even needing to use your opposite hand, right? You can just open up the safety with your trigger pulling finger, right? You should trigger pulling hand. What do you call that? Your active hand or whatever, your shooting hand. Anyways, they have those custom aftermarket safeties, but it's curious that that doesn't even get mentioned in the ballistics report. The other thing, there were a whole bunch of things that I looked at and I said, and this is the reason why I do Hellfire Agency. My whole bag is critical thinking. I am so not above admitting I was wrong about something. That flag style safety thing, I was totally sold on it, and apparently it's not true because I then said a few times now, to my embarrassment, that and then they sent that rifle into the ATF, and she fired it, and there's no mention of a scope on there. I reviewed that ballistics report again this afternoon when I said, well, not only did she say that the examiner say that she was able to fire 6 rounds out of that Mauser, just as it was, just as she received it, apparently. Not only did she say that, but now the person who was in charge of the crime scene said that the first thing they did with the weapon was to make it safe, meaning that they picked it up and opened the bolts and found a casing in there that allegedly they want to say is the casing from the round that killed Charlie Kirk. And so and they get that bullet casing out. They wouldn't have been able to do that if that safety was armed, and it was that that factory safety, supposedly. But then I may have just gotten that wrong. Unless I didn't, in which case, what the hell's going on here? But apparently I got that wrong. The other one that I got wrong was, oh gosh, what was it? What was I just thinking of? Oh, was that the tool mark examiner at the ATF, the ballistics woman, said, had included in there that item, the first item that she lists of things she received, what is a Mauser 98 with a 30-06 chamber and a sporterized barrel and optical accessory. And I went, oh my gosh, 2 words that are so important that I've been telling people, I'm like, there's no mention of a scope. There was. She mentioned that it had a scope. Now I don't recall her, and I did examine it again today. It didn't say that it had a scope on the rifle, but it didn't say it didn't. So apparently, whatever the situation is with the scope, you are able to arm it with the safety without taking the scope off. So that theory is more or less spent. But it's an interesting one. That plus the Lance testimony were the main things that made me go, or I really just want Tyler Robinson to be innocent, and it's just not true. And so that was the moment where I said, I still feel very suspicious of all the holes in the story, but people do things like this, and people do things like this. But I do feel like Tyler Robinson is entitled to defense. Everybody's entitled to a defense. But the more important thing I'm concerned about right now is if Tyler Robinson, it seems to me like Tyler Robinson's attorneys have been pleading from the beginning of this preliminary hearing saying, hold up here. Suppose that our client wants to confess and wants to take a plea deal. Right now, this rhetoric is so hot, and you guys are coming after us so hot with death penalty talks that it starts to feel like even if our client were willing to admit that he did it, you wouldn't want him to because you're so desperate to put him in front of a firing squad. And what if our client did it and wants to confess? What if he wants to come clean and you can get justice for Charlie Kirk? Is it only justice for Charlie Kirk if he faces a firing squad? and it just seems to me like that's the case they've been making from the beginning. Is we'll defend our client because he's entitled to a defense, but the state is now making it impossible to negotiate what would be a relatively normal thing, in being able to say, look, our client wants to plead guilty. He wants to own up to it. He wants to take his lumps. He wants to pay his, to pay his debt to society. Let's get him on the way, and let's forego this crazy trial. And they're not even giving us an opportunity, because Donald Trump got on television and said, we're going to find him and we're going to make sure he gets a firing squad. And now they're determined to prove that he deserves the firing squad. But even if Tyler Robinson did it, there are major reasons why it fails to meet Utah's standard for what is for what qualifies for the death penalty. And so at this point, they have good reason to say, right now, you guys are not interested at all in getting justice for Charlie Kirk. What you're interested in is the sideshow of seeing a man in 2026 get a firing squad execution. And it's just bloodlust at this point. And they have a fair point. I think that they've said that from the beginning. Yeah, blood atonement, exactly. So, yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what they want, blood atonement. Somebody was mentioning on a podcast I was listening to, was it yesterday, and said, I was like, man, I wish I could call in right now. But I didn't have good, strong internet right now. I don't know if you guys, how many of you have been with us, how long you've been with us, but I'm currently in what I'm referring to as the TV dinner house. This is, if you don't know, this is Reflectix. Originally, I had planned to do all of my house in all of the it's really late here and my brain has not been doing great lately. All of the insulation in spray foam, only to discover that it's stupid expensive. And I had to get it up to like 3 inches proud to get the kind of R value that I would need, especially when it turns wintry out here. So I got as much of the roof as we could afford to do with spray foam, and then I put 2 layers of this stuff, Reflectix. It turns out that the R value of 2 layers of Reflectix is about 21. So by itself, that's not enough for the ceiling of your house. But with a layer of spray foam over it, I am finding it very satisfying. Like there's like right now I have the air conditioner running. My house is such a mess, you guys. Yeah, you can't really see it anyways. I have a window unit over here. It's looking like my partner bought a mini split for his son, and he doesn't want it. And I'm like, I will take that mini split. So I'm going to have a mini split over here, and we're going to put probably on this back wall a propane heater, so that if it turns out that the mini split isn't going to be enough to keep the whole place warm in the winter, we can just put on the propane heater and heat it up. Anyways, sorry to. We're now at the point where I devolve into just talking my personal stuff. Sorry if that's boring. But anyways, so yeah, so I've been working on that. I forget why I was telling you that. As it gets later, when I start doing these later shows, I start to get kind of scatterbrained at the end. But it's been a lot of work. So yeah. Oh yeah. Somebody was saying on one of these podcasts where they went live for the whole day through the trial. And I just kind of checked in with it occasionally when I wasn't just listening to the trial. And somebody said, I don't know Mormons very well, but it's remarkable that Utah is one of the last states in the union that still has the death penalty and has a firing squad penalty. Like, it just seems so barbaric. How do Mormons feel about capital punishment? And I was like, man, see, this was the thing back in the day when my ass was parked at home doing boring video work, in Utah County, I could just hop on to a live with somebody and say, okay, so let me explain something to you. Mormons believe in this thing called blood atonement. And those of you who don't know, and you're happy, I'd be happy to have somebody explain to me how I'm wrong about this. The doctrine of blood atonement, as I have always understood it, as taught by Brigham Young and others, is that some sins, especially sins against the kingdom of God, are so egregious that it's inappropriate to put them to the charge of Jesus to pay for in his atoning sacrifice, and to take advantage of the blood of the Lamb, the blood of Christ, to pay for your sins. That the only blood that can pay for those sins is your blood. And that was the doctrine under which the Danites, or the avenging angels, or the Nauvoo Legion, could be sent by the prophet to say, according to at least Wild Bill Hickman, who called himself a captain of the Danites. As I understand it, the head of the Danite order in that time was what's his name, mayor of Salt Lake City, Daniel. I forget. Tim will throw it at me here in a second now. Daniel, I forget. Anyways, he wasn't as high as Daniel what's his bucket or as Porter Rockwell, but he was pretty high up there. Wells, thank you, Tim. Daniel Wells, Daniel B. Wells, that's right. As I understand, was the head of the Legion at that time. Of course, then at the time they had another guy who was the sword bearer, I believe, was still alive during that time, which was Joseph Noble, who carried Joseph Smith's sword. There's all this secret ritual around murdering people in Mormonism, and yes, absolutely, there are still Mormons who believe in the doctrine of blood atonement. To wit, that actually comes home to one of my series about murder among the Mormons that I did for the first couple of years of Hellfire Agency is called Blood Atonement. And I came up with the idea to call it that, called fresh to my mind when I took this interview with, I didn't film the interview. I grabbed the interview of Larry Anderson, who was the stake missionary that converted Ted Bundy and baptized Ted Bundy into the Mormon Church in 1975. And when he was questioned, this guy Larry Anderson, he's a hoot. He's an interesting character. I've known a couple of people who've had conversations with him, and they say, "But that guy's a character." But I saw this interview with him in which he was asked about baptizing Ted Bundy and then finding out what Ted Bundy was doing in Utah afterwards. And he was one of these people who said, I didn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And told people all the time, you don't know Ted. Ted couldn't possibly do this. And it's been decades that he's had to come around on the fact that he baptized a killer. He baptized a really bad guy into the church. And when he did, at the time, one of the church's reporters was Lynn Packer, same guy who blew the doors open on the whole Tim Ballard investigation, got all of this. We owe all of this to Lynn Packer. And Lynn Packer was sitting in the trial in the courtroom where Ted Bundy was being tried for the aggravated kidnapping of Carol DeRange. And he said that two guys tapped him on the shoulder, and they're like, "Are you that guy who writes for the?" I think I want to say it was for the Deseret News. It was covering the trial for Deseret News, and he's like, "Maybe. Why? Who are you?" And they said, and well, no, he said they asked him, "Why are you covering only bad things about Ted? Why are you only covering things that make him look guilty?" And he turned and looked at them and said, "Because the prosecution goes first." That's how it works. and and they're like, "Why you got to make him sound so guilty?" And he's like, I'm not. I'm just covering what they're saying in the trial. Why are you so convinced that he's innocent?" And they said, "Because we're the ones who baptized him." And it was this guy, Larry. Anyway, he gave this interview back a few years ago, about 10 years ago, I want to say, where he said, when he was asked about how he felt, looking back and realizing he baptized a killer, he said, we taught Ted the doctrine of blood atonement, and he believed it. And I remember looking at his face, and he was so earnest. And I'm like, he believes that. And number one, what a distortion of blood atonement as a concept, that it's an act of mercy to allow you to pay for your own sins with your life. But in his mind, the young man that he baptized into the Mormon church is in heaven now. That Ted Bundy's forgiven. He's in heaven because God allowed him to pay for it in the electric chair. And the guy who baptized him in the church, like, he believes this. Yeah. Mormons love a death, man. They love to see an eye for an eye when it comes to murder, or really anything. Like back in the day, if you don't know, Hickman, Wild Bill Hickman, wrote a book. Well, co-wrote a book called Brigham's Destroying Angel, and it's been like a source of contention for a long time because a lot of people, say that he admits to various persons over the course of his life, including at least his daughter, that he made up a lot of the story in Brigham's Destroying Angel. That he elaborated, that he fudged some of the details to make it more gory, to make it more graphic, to make it more dramatized, over dramatized, because the guy he wrote it with told him that it would sell better, which didn't turn out to be true, as I understand it. And so for years, the church has been saying, so he made it all up. You can't trust anything he says in the book, but you line up the things that he talks about doing, and they all line up. Sure, some of the details are obviously lies, but then but the fact that they happened, like the burning of Fort Bridger, for example, or the war with the Timpanogos and is it Black Hawk? What's the guy's name? Anyways, yeah, the war with the Indians. That it's all in there. Now, of course, he makes himself out to be this rogue hero of the story, when the truth is much more wicked than that. But anyways, he would say he says in there that they had basically a code word from Brigham Young. This is when Brigham Young was the prophet, and Brigham Young would say to a member of the Danites, "It's high time so and so was used up." And if Brigham Young said your name there, "It's high time so and so was used up," you died. And then he tells stories of people that he did it to. So it's a curious time. Mormons love blood atonement. They love this idea. Not all of them, obviously, but there are some, and they want to see blood atonement for Charlie Kirk. Fuck knows why. But anyways, So I wish I could have shown you more of this video that I prepared for you guys. My internet's been sucking since I got out here, and the more layers of of reflectix I put on the walls, literally, the less Wi-Fi reception I have in here, which is kind of a good thing, honestly. I certainly feel a lot more secure, and the aliens can't read my thoughts. Um, but unfortunately, that does mean I'm probably going to have to pay the county to run an internet line out from the road to my property. Luckily, my property is literally 10 feet from the road. So, or this my house. So I'm excited. It's going to be a little bit of a hairy time for making content over the course of the next couple of weeks while I get my internet updated and while I finish all of this drywall. You guys want to see some like wild stuff? Don't judge my messy house. That is a big stack of drywall there. I got two jacks on either side of what's going to become my wall to my bedroom over here, and the same is true. You can't really see; it's really dark over there on the far side. Oh, in case Hyde is here with us, Hyde, I hear you on the comments you made about don't use expanding foam on the gaps in the drywall. I hear you. I hear you. Hey, it's Hyde. What's up, buddy? In Virginia. I'm in Virginia. Southwest Virginia. When people ask me, what part of Virginia are you in? I'm like, it's in that southwest part that's called Kentucky. Literally, I go 2 hours in this direction, I'm in Kentucky. 1 hour this direction, I'm in Tennessee. That about 2 hours that direction, I'm in North Carolina. And supposedly I can get to Georgia from here. I can get to everywhere from here. An hour and a half? No, what did it turn out to be? I think it was like 2 hours, 2 hours or a little more to get to Louisville, which is one of my favorite places to go. Oh yeah, where are you? Oh, I mean, where are you, Hyde? Aren't you still back in the big UC? Um, yeah. But in answer to your question, Hyde, in case you didn't see my answer to your comment, I definitely am not planning to paint over the expanding foam. I learned a while ago, dealing with drywall issues in a house, that you can take expanding foam, put it behind a hole or a gap in drywall, and then put a layer of plaster over it and then tape and mud over it, and basically you're just using it as backing so that you're not just feeding plaster or drywall paste into a big gaping hole, and you don't have to like cut out like a whole section and replace like a whole section and so forth. So when I ended up on my first set of panels, most of the panels I've been cutting are tight. Like this one right over here, you see that right there? A little mud and a little tape and a little mud, and those panels are fit perfectly. I wish I could say that this wall was as good. And the first wall that I did, though, I was like, "Holy crap! I am rusty at snapping drywall." And I had this like gaps like that. Like, what the hell am I doing? It was hot back then. And back when I had nothing but this foil around me to protect me from the sun, I started to dehydrate so fast. And my brain was not working so hot at that point. So yeah, now that I mean, I'll tell you what. As soon as I had these drywall panels on this wall back here, the it's all drywalled up over here where the air conditioner is. As soon as I put up these drywall panels back here, and then I went step back and I stood, not leaning against, but like just almost leaning against the drywall while I caught my breath. And I could feel not the air conditioning, but the cool. I don't know how else to put it, but like the cool of the air conditioning on in that drywall, like seeping into that drywall and basically just like tapping the heat off of my body. And I went, "Oh my gosh, this is it. finally, I'm finally seeing results after all this work. And I still have so far to go. My floors. Anybody's got great ideas for floors? I'm taking them. I have OSB on the floor of the shed, and I'm going to put by Monday. I'm planning to put a vapor barrier down, and then I have this. I have insulation panels that are meant to dampen the sound. That's one of the biggest problems with these shed house conversions. Um, yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. And so um, that's one of the major things with these houses built basically on sleds is that every step you take inside the structure, everybody can hear it, and then I want to be able to play my music loud. I want to be able to play video games with my son. I want to be able to close my bedroom door, and this is my bedroom that we're in right now, my bedroom. Um, and I want to be able to be loud in my bedroom without disturbing everybody. So, anyways, so I got insulation for the floors, but it didn't occur to me at the time that meant I was going to have to put another layer of subflooring on. And so I'm like, oh, crap. I'm running out of space in here as it is without elevating the floor again. But I don't see any way around it. But I got a bunch of these peel and stick tiles, which I thought sounded great until I actually got them. I mean, I'll probably put them down anyways, and they'll probably be fine. But they're just like linoleum. I didn't realize that. Maybe I have one around here. Do I have one? Anyways, we'll see. They're probably fine. But I won't kid you. There was a moment where I toyed with the idea of saying, well, maybe I'll get the folks to invest in an epoxy finish on the floor and just finish it like it's concrete. I've always wanted that. I've always wanted to do that. But anyways, so we'll have to see what it comes out to. Laminate floor, tongue and groove. Okay, yeah, my partner has something like that, but they have like the really soft one. I don't care for it, but I have considered doing something like a tongue and groove thing. The ceiling, I'm probably going to wind up doing as Luan, as just as a curve. That's what I'm looking at now. Is just to like put a natural curve of just plywood across the top, and possibly, maybe not right away, but possibly putting some strips of common board or MDF if I can get cheap MDF and do it. I don't know if you've ever seen that where people do like faux shiplap and it looks really good. So I might do that. I have like until like Friday of next week to figure out what my ceilings are going to be made out of. But I think it's going to be exciting. I'm stoked about it. But I definitely need to do that. You don't think the epoxy will last? Oh, interesting. Interesting. Well, I'm definitely going to have to do another layer of subflooring. So, I've tried to figure out every kind of way to seal up OSB, and the consensus seems to be you can't. You surround it with Tyvek or whatever. You surround it with plastic, and that's what you do. You moisture barrier as best as you can. There's nothing else to do. So we'll see what we end up doing there. But I definitely, those who are concerned about the weird paint on the walls, we did try for a while there to create a moisture barrier by just taking cheap spray paint, primer paint, and just painting, a quick coat of cheap spray paint on the walls. The problematic areas where I looked at it and I went, this isn't going to protect against mildew. It's not enough. I wound up putting a waterproof layer over those, and then we have this Reflectix will, which I think will provide some protection, but really the most important thing is that fan, that solar fan. Oh, people who were concerned about the solar fan leaking when it rains. Um, I have, after upon closer review, discovered that the flashing I installed with the fan, I had not installed nearly as well as I thought I did. So, um, it's looking like I'm going to, like, I may be able to fix it, but just by taking some quality roofings. It's a metal roof, quality self drilling screws with silicone washers, etc., and some roofing metal, and actually flashing over the flashing that comes with the actual fan, and layer it on top of it so that when the rain comes down, it actually just rolls off that top flashing. And I think if I do that, it'll solve all my problems. Um, Mostly, I think the rain is coming in through screw holes that I had to add from the bottom of the roof, um, because I nearly fell down off the roof. And I'm like, I ain't risking this. I'll just secure it from the bottom. I'll figure out what to do with it later. And I was so tired, I completely forgot about it once it started to rain. And then I realized, looking at it closer, I'm like, oh, there's screw holes right through the roof. And it's right where the flashing is letting water under the flashing, and then yeah, so yeah, of course it leaks. So I think if I put flashing on the top of it, like, from what I understand, you can try everything you want to try and patch it from the bottom, try and patch it here and there, get the, like, caulk gun stuff. That they have, like, metal roofing patch kits where they have, like, metal in the actual, in, like, the caulk gun, and you can just, like, you know patch it up, and it just doesn't work. From what I understand, it's like, yeah, you just gotta flash over it. That's all. That's the only solution. Yeah, that's what I meant with the rubber gaskets. That's exactly what I was thinking about doing. So I'm excited. Once I have this done, right now I got a 100-pound tank out there. I figured out that I can basically survive a week, um, running my computer, the air conditioner, and charging up devices. I can run about a week on 100 pounds of propane. And right now, propane, we got a guy in town that I can take my 100-pound tank down to, and it costs $54. And that's my energy for this whole house. I don't have one line connecting me into the grid, not anywhere, and I'm kind of loving it. So, anyways, talk to you guys' ears off. That's 2 hours to talking about. I still don't buy that Taylor Robinson did it, but uh, I I have to admit I was surprised at how good a case they made for it. So, yeah, you have to come on out, guys. We got to. Yeah, you guys got to come out to Appalachia, man. We got to have, like, a Church of Korihor event out here. I think it's gonna be great. Um, the great worst thing about this little town, about all these little towns in Appalachia, like this one, this is Coburn, is that everybody's leaving, and so it's like just about the most beautiful place I've ever been, and property is getting really affordable out here. It's like the one place in America where you can buy property for a pretty good deal. It's still not affordable, mind you, but yeah, I'm thinking it's going to get there because people have to go where there are jobs, and unfortunately, that's not been here. Now, there's been some changes in the administration, Oh, hello, big moth. Oh, aren't you pretty? Um, so I think Virginia might be the exception to the rule. I don't think we're going to see Kentucky turn blue anytime soon, but or Tennessee, but Virginia might actually make some changes. So I'm excited to be here. So yeah, you guys got to come out and see sometime. Anyways, so it's Friday tonight. I got a lot of work to do this weekend. I'd like to promise that we're going to do a sermon on Sunday, but I just don't know that I'm going to make it. So if I don't, I'll probably just go live again to check in and get some updates on some other stories I've been working on. I have a couple of interviews, including with Beth Magnetic and my friend Josephina, who is a TikTok and YouTube influencer and atheist. We had a great conversation, he and I, about the Matt Dillahunty versus Brett Hartley debate over atheist spirituality. Really good, or not debate, but contention over atheist spirituality. And it was a really good one. I've been trying to get these things rolled out. So I'm going to try and get caught up as much as I can now that I actually have a structure where I can sit down, sometimes have internet enough that I can actually start posting videos again. Anyways, love your faces, and I will see you guys soon.